When a financial system collapses and a major economic crisis arrives, the first questions that come to people's minds are not GDP data or central bank announcements.
Much more concrete things. Can I withdraw my money? Can I shop at the grocery store? Will my savings still mean something next month? These are not small questions. These are actually the most important data points for people. And what history has taught us is this: surviving crises comes not from intelligence, but from having less vulnerability. Let's look at these lessons one by one, not in abstract terms, but with real-life examples. Cash access, more valuable than wealth on paper. In the 1930s in the US, bank runs were not an abstract concept. Think of the photographs of people waiting in line in front of banks early in the morning. Millions of families had money in the bank yet could not reach that money. Because the bank had collapsed. Or had closed its doors. Or had simply said, "We cannot make payments today." What made the difference? Those who had a few weeks of expenses under the mattress. Those who had accounts in more than one bank. Those who had small assets that could quickly be converted to cash. These provided an easier cash flow. That is why even in the modern world, even after we have moved to everything digital, keeping a few months of living expenses liquid is not a strange habit. It is a historically proven buffer. Debt, efficient in good weather, a trap in bad. The most destructive aspect of the Great Depression was not just unemployment. Thousands of families were left face to face with mortgage payments calculated for an economy that no longer existed. The job was gone, income had fallen, but the monthly installment was still there. A closer example from Turkey: during the 2001 crisis, small businesses with foreign currency-based debt saw their debts double overnight. The dollar exchange rate jumped from 600,000 TL to 1,500,000 TL. A tradesman who had taken out a dollar loan to buy machinery for his factory found himself unable to pay his debt, even though the machine was still running. A tradesman who had taken out a dollar loan to buy machinery for his factory found himself unable to pay his debt, even though the machine was still running. Hyperinflation, the moments when time becomes the enemy. In Germany in 1922 to 1923, people ran to the market as soon as they received their wages. Because waiting until the afternoon would erode the purchasing power of that money. Bread prices changed between morning and evening. Similar scenes were experienced in Zimbabwe in 2008. Billion-dollar banknotes were printed, but they were not enough to buy a loaf of bread. Citizens turned to foreign currency instead of local money, to jewelry, to buying livestock, because the question of will what I hold in my hand still be valuable tomorrow had settled at the center of all economic decisions. The common lesson from these experiences: it is not just about holding cash, but about thinking how quickly that cash will lose its value. Useful assets, not the most elegant before the crisis, but the most functional. When the 2001 crisis erupted in Argentina, many people's access to their savings in the bank was frozen. But during that period, the tradesman who had goods on hand, the farmer who had agricultural land, the craftsman who ran a repair shop, were able to sustain their livelihoods even though the system had collapsed. Think of the stories left behind by tradesmen who lived through the 1994 or 2001 crises in Istanbul, grocers who had stock that would not lose value, shop owners who held foreign currency, those with little cash debt. Those with strong trade networks. These were not the most sophisticated investors. But they were the ones who came out with the least damage. In times of crisis, value shifts to things that people can understand, use, and barter. It moves away from abstract indicators of wealth. Local trust, a stronger infrastructure than a portfolio. When the banking system in Argentina froze, barter clubs sprouted like mushrooms in the cities. People printed their own local currencies and exchanged their goods and services with one another. This was not idealism, it was necessity. And it worked. Or a more ordinary example, during the 2020 pandemic period worldwide, solidarity logistics were established much more quickly in neighborhoods with strong community networks. People who knew each other shared when they could not find a grocery store, tradesmen found flexible solutions with their customers. Strong local ties transform into economic infrastructure when the system comes under pressure. The real lesson: diversify your dependencies. People are very interested in diversifying their investments. But they tie their lives to a single point: one bank, one source of income, one foreign currency-linked debt structure, one city, one sector. History has shown time and again how risky this is. What does this mean in practical terms? Accounts in more than one bank, an emergency cash reserve, however small if possible, minimizing debt, especially foreign currency-linked debt, a skill or service that will still be in demand during a crisis, local trade relationships and social networks. You do not have to predict crises, but you can reduce your vulnerability to them. Throughout history, those who came out of crises best were not those who knew everything in advance. They were those who could bend when the blow came. Those who could access their money, those with little debt, those who owned useful things, those who could win by adapting, and those who were not alone. This is not glamorous. But when the system collapses, survival itself becomes simple again.